Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dr. Prim's Thought Space. I am Primrose Jikombarero Joylin Ima, and I create content about research, career development, and wellness. Today's episode is specially dedicated to social science students, graduates, or anyone who intends on pursuing their studies in the social sciences. I speak, of course, mainly from personal experience as someone who has majored in politics, international relations, gender studies, and public administration, and as someone who has worked as a lecturer, teaching assistant, mentor, tutor, career coach, and mainly a friend to people who have excelled with their social science majors. So, this is, of course, to say if we succeeded, so can you. And without any further ado, let me give you a rundown of the 7 key points that I will be looking at. So the 7 key points that I've prepared for this video are not in any particular order, but I do believe that the way that I thought about them shows something about my train of thought in terms of what can help you to become successful as a social science major. Number one is about research skills. Number two is about interpersonal skills. Number three, which is linked to interpersonal skills, is your public facing identity. Number four is technical skills. Number five is being business minded or entrepreneurial. Number six is getting a master's. And number seven, of course, my key favorite, about attaining a PhD. Okay, so let's get into them one by one. Number one is to say that you need to become an excellent researcher. I personally benefited from the reality that I've always been passionate about research, about reading, as well as critical thinking and writing. If you don't have that natural or nurtured type of interest, you need to develop it, at least for the sake of carving out your career identity. And you need to make the effort to be excellent, not only at qualitative research, but quantitative research methods, of course. In the long run, you might find out that you are stronger at one more than the other, or that you're good at both. And, you just have to be prepared for positions that require either or both. So, speaking about research, it is important for you to be strategic about the topics you write about in your assignments, as well as in your research projects, dissertations, and theses. Oftentimes, the advice is to say that pursue your research in areas that are always topical or otherwise labeled as evergreen. So for me, for example, my PhD focused on electoral conflict, focused on diplomacy, peacemaking, as well as democracy, which I think for the longest time are going to be relevant. Other evergreen topics, I think, for the season that we're in include migration management, environmental topics, climate change, and you can go down to specific topics. Technology, in particular, the adoption of artificial intelligence in many sectors. And also, evergreen topics include enterprise development as well as gender justice, particularly sexual and reproductive health rights, gender and the politics of development, amongst others. So do your research in your area to say, what should I pursue in terms of my research focus so that I contribute to existing knowledge through my own research, through the work that I do, because organizations are looking for people who are well versed in those areas, and also by identifying the gaps that have been noted in existing literature or reports. Are the gaps theoretical? Are the gaps in relation to frameworks? Are the gaps in relation to approaches to particular problems? Are the gaps in relation to some context or a certain demographic being under-researched? So you need to know all of that. Being a researcher, I believe, is key to being excellent in the social sciences. I say this because it goes beyond being employed by a non-governmental organization, government or intergovernmental organization or think tank. You can actually become self-employed as a consultant researcher, as a consultant editor, as well as someone who might actually start their own research-based organization. So aim to pursue a career that is research-oriented. Make sure that when you do research courses and when you do your honors research, master's dissertation, and PhD thesis, you put in all the effort to harness everything that you need to in terms of honing the skills so that you don't only earn the degrees, but earn them with excellent grades and proficiency as a researcher in your own right. The second one is interpersonal skills. I think that it is important to be relatable and likable. I've heard about this many times without number that sometimes people get jobs because of how they are relatable to the panel that is interviewing them or to the person that is looking for someone to work with. Sometimes it's because when you enter a room and speak to people, they figure out that they actually like you. And oftentimes that is a major determinant of whether people want to work with you or not, and whether or not they're actually going to employ you or take up, the consideration of having you work with them as a consultant. And I think that humility is one aspect of my life that has helped me to get into spaces. I have a teachable spirit, and people can pick that up. And once I show that I have a teachable spirit, I actually demonstrate by excelling at what I've been taught, and also being someone who has lived in multiple contexts as a migrant, as a person living in a rural context, as a person living in a ghetto, as a person attending an international school, as a person attending a government school, and learning how to interact with people in those spaces, I think shaped me into the person I am today. I don't necessarily have, the core tips regarding how to develop your interpersonal skills, but I think that if it is possible for you to, seek out the services of a coach or someone who is well versed in grooming people for the particular field that you want to enter into, please make sure that you do that. Personally, because I've got a lot that I want to do personally, career wise, I have for the past few months engaged the services of a career coach who's helping me to map out my career into the best version of Dr. Prim. So I do believe that it's something you need to look into. It is a pity that oftentimes these are skills that are not transferred to us, and oftentimes they're also not skills that are easily transferable, and you just have to learn as you go. But foremost, please exercise humility and get into spaces as not only an expert who wants people to hear what they have to say or read what they've written, but engage with other people's work. Show that you've engaged with their work and speak to them about it in multiple forums. And that will show, of course, that you're someone who is not only relatable, but you're also someone who's likable, because people like people who know about them. And I think that really works out when people, want to shoot their shot. You are at an event, networking, you've done your background research on particular people. When you engage with them, you tell them what you've learned from their work, from their products or services, or even, for example, from something that they've written or their theory, if they're an academic, and so forth and so forth. So I think I'll stop there when it comes to interpersonal skills. But I think to work towards being relatable as well as likable. Number three, public facing skills. I think at some point you need to pick a struggle. You need to be public facing. For me, that is a given. It's a non negotiable. Are you a TV person? Are you a radio person? Are you a YouTube person? Are you someone who blogs? Or are you someone who actually, specializes in attending events, be it seminars or workshops and what have you, and participate fully? People seeing you in action, people hearing about your thoughts and your work. Because if you don't do that by finding a medium, oftentimes people won't know about you. I have personally benefited from creating this YouTube channel. I've gained exposure by being invited to speak at spaces that I would otherwise not have been invited to if someone had advertised on some other platform, or if someone had done like their own form of headhunting. But because I put myself out there through YouTube, then I have exposed myself to a wide range of potential research partners, wide range of potential employers, wide range of potential colleagues, as well as, of course, consultancy clients. So I do think that I need to improve in terms of public facing skills relating to doing TV interviews. I've done radio interviews. I think I've done well on LinkedIn, where I have almost 12,000 followers now. And I do want to do more on other platforms that may be relevant to my work. That could include Instagram and maybe TikTok at some point. And I do think this is another area of life where if you see that your skills are not up to par when it comes to those that are excelling in your area, do get some training, watch others doing it, practice on your own. You might be, in a space where you do mock interviews, you do mock recordings that don't go anywhere, but help you to actually boost your personal confidence. So make sure also that your public facing strategy relates to what you want to do in life career wise. So if you want to be an intellectual, an academic, are you doing this in academic spaces? If you want to be a politician, are you doing this in spaces that are catch areas for politicians? If you want to be a human rights activist, it's similar. Are you featuring in spaces where human rights advocates, activists and whatnot are putting themselves out there in as well? So I think I botched English a bit there, but just to say that you need to put yourself in the right spaces. You need to make sure your voice is heard by the right voices. This is all about strategically positioning yourself, not just necessarily being public facing aimlessly. A website, I think, is a good addition. If you're someone who thinks that it's important to engage with content online, you might be brave enough to engage on Twitter, now X, of course. But if you feel like you don't want to be that kind of public facing person, then that's also fine. Just make sure that you pick a struggle and run with it. Okay, number 4, technical skills. My list may not be exhaustive, but I've come to realize that if you've got technical skills, you don't always end up struggling to the max when times are tough. Personally, for example, in the year 2025, I could not secure an academic role. I did not want to be a postdoctoral research fellow because I'd done that for close to 4 years. So I ended up utilizing my digital media skills to become a digital media manager in a political advisory firm. That, of course, kept me grounded in the sense that I got to gain more exposure into politics and political consultancy. I also at the time managed to hone my skills by being a social media manager for a wide range of social media accounts, being part of content creation from the stage of curation up to the point of engaging when the content was out in the public, and also, of course, analyzing its impact, thinking about how best to improve and so forth. And I think that those are skills that are required across many sectors nowadays. So, of course, that is something that I do not regret. Of course, in as much as I pre-gained skills from being a YouTuber who engages on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, I had to do a digital marketing course. And I believe that it helped me to some extent. I may not have used all the skills from it in the time that I served as a digital media manager, but it helped to boost my confidence and to also acquaint me with the language of the trade, the terminology that I needed when engaging with multimedia managers, when I was engaging with graphic designers, when I was engaging with marketing and communications experts, as well as clients. So I think that's some technical skills that you might want to develop for yourself. If you have an interest, in events management, you can do that and steer your events management skills towards an area of interest. So I always urge, for example, my diplomacy students to say, you can literally be the best event planner in diplomacy, on demand locally in your country, regionally, continentally, or even globally for big events. You can be an event moderator if you've got excellent speaking skills, facilitation skills, and you want to shine on the stages across the world. And I think another technical skill you can actually work on is being a behind the scenes person. Maybe you already know how to use cameras really well, or you want to learn to do that. I think that's also an option. This list, of course, as I said, is not exhaustive, but I do believe that there is a wide range of technical lessons that you can pick up along the way. Some people going to the police force or even the military or air force, those are fields where you have to be trained for them. But what gives you an edge is that you already have acquired these social science skills that will make people, want you to work with them as an advisor, as a director, or even as a head of a mission, depending on what the mission is about. So don't shy away from that as well. Now, moving on, number 5, having a business or entrepreneurship mindset. I think I found this to be important because personally, I love making money. So I always find ways to make money from my skills, not only through employment, but also through being entrepreneurial. And I think that what helped me was when I started working for different people and they were into making profits. This is people in corporate. Being business minded helped me to think in such a way that I helped them to gain profits, but it also helped me to hone skills that would later help me to develop my own business, which I haven't started, but I have that confidence from experience. And I also know that, being business oriented will help me to also engage with like minded people, team up with them, collaborate, and, develop something that goes far. And also, I think being business minded has helped me because if you look at some of the papers I've written, they are in the field of business. I only did business in high school, but because of my interest, I've been curious enough through research as well as the work that I've done for different people to think about solutions that help people to put bread on their table, make money in such a way that they become profitable, so that they improve their livelihoods as well as the livelihoods of their communities, countries, continents, and so forth. So I don't have much to say in terms of that, but I think that to exercise that muscle, try and get into business in one area, see how you fare in that area, and hone those skills and develop them further. Something that I personally want to pursue, I haven't thought about this too much, but I was thinking about what it would mean to monetize my content creation. Of course, not going the extreme influencer route where clients dilute the content that I churn out, but in such a way that I'm not always speaking in front of camera, taking all this time to create and edit and post and engage with just a few hundred people, but to actually end up, being someone who has a wider reach of the thousands or even a million someday. And of course, that will gain me some income through endorsements as well as through the platforms where my content will be. Okay, so number 6 is about the masters. This is my belief. You might think otherwise. I think that if you're pursuing social science majors, getting a master's degree should be a no-brainer. So if you are entering university this year or anytime soon, consider that. If you're already in university doing your undergraduate slash honors, consider doing that. If you already have a master's, oh well, I think you've already done the right thing, but hopefully it's a master's in a field that is helping you career-wise. Why I'm saying a master's, I've realized that to a large extent in academic institutions, research skills are often chiseled at master stage. So if you ended honors and you haven't done rigorous research that explores a wide range of approaches, methods, and whatnot, you might not be strong enough to get into the world of work, either as a consultant or as someone working in an organization. Another reason why I think a master's is a no-brainer is the reality that it has become a minimum requirement for most well-paying jobs. So if you can invest in a master's early enough, please do that if you haven't considered doing so. And I think there can be an advantage of leaving university first after your undergraduate qualification, going to work, and then doing a master's in line with your field of expertise or the work that you'll be doing. But that, of course, is not a blessing that is guaranteed to everyone. Some of us had to go all the way to masters before we entered into the job market in what I may call maybe, really meaningful jobs. Okay, number 7, PhD. As a PhD, a must have? I don't think so. I think that a PhD is a nice to have. I wanted a PhD ever since the age of 15, and I wanted to have my PhD by 30. So my trajectory is one that is less common. Oftentimes, people pursue their careers, do some time in a particular industry, and end up doing a PhD, focusing on topics that oftentimes relate to the work that they've been doing. I do think that there's no harm in staying on in university to do a PhD if you've got the funding and if you're making sure that you've got a strategy that helps you to learn skills from elsewhere. Staying in school all the way to PhD is not an excuse for you not getting skills that are desirable in the job market. That, unfortunately, is the truth. Oftentimes, no one is going to give you grace to say, "Oh no, she was still in school pursuing her PhD, so she doesn't have experience in this area. Let's do X, Y, and Z." I think that happens less often. And once you have a PhD, particularly if you haven't worked for a long time, you also have to suck up to the reality that you have to do the time in terms of earning work experience. So you and a doctor who has both worked and attained their PhD might be in very different situations. But that doesn't diminish the quality of your PhD. All right. So now that I've been like saying all these things, you might be wondering at this stage, what exactly is Dr. Prim trying to say? I think what I'm trying to say here is that the job market is unpredictable as well as ever changing, and demand regulates what you're likely to do. So, when I mentioned research skills, these are evergreen skills, they'll always be required. And different types of organizations are looking for people with research skills. So, the quantitative, the qualitative, it helps you. What gives you a particular edge is the topics that you pursue. I've seen people who have excelled because they had an environmental focus. I've seen people who have excelled because they were focusing on human rights issues, although it might seem like, that area is saturated. I've seen people that have focused on technology. Some have focused maybe on conflict resolution, peacemaking, and whatnot. And those niche areas they've carved out for themselves served them well. But that is not to say you should always have one niche. Personally, for example, after master's, I worked for a political economy organization as a regional analyst. And the work that I did involved looking at alternative rural livelihoods in Southern Africa, but also looking at the impact of political developments on the economies of major African countries like your South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and so forth. And then from there, I shifted to a role in foreign affairs. I was working for the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade in Zimbabwe. So I was essentially a civil servant. And what I was serving was, of course, the country's foreign policy at the time, and however it changed would dictate, of course, my work. And that area, I think, is quite different from what I was doing earlier on, because as a regional analyst, there was space to always take up projects that were linked to different types of clients that, of course, my superiors, or rather the owner of the organization, would have been taken in. And it involved some field work, going to do research in rural areas and engaging with people at community level, people from different walks of life, pastors, women who are working at a market, people who are leaders of business initiatives, people who are leaders of non-governmental organizations, and people who are part of government structures in particular provinces or countries. But at Foreign Affairs, mainly interactions were with diplomats, with people from aligned ministries that were linked to our work. Let's say, for example, the Ministry of Information, and also working, of course, with people who are at diplomatic missions abroad sent from Zimbabwe, but with people who are based at diplomatic missions that are based in Zimbabwe, just to name a few. Now, as you can already see, I gained skills in interacting with people from multiple facets of life. And as I said earlier, those interpersonal skills are magical. Now, in terms of being a public facing person, you might be hindered or even promoted by the roles that you take up. I had always wanted to have a YouTube channel. This desire is something that came to me when I was doing my master's in 2016. But I could not have a YouTube channel when I was serving in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because I think to some extent it would expose me, but there could have been potentially some conflict of interest, because if I wanted to create content relating to that, I would probably need some form of clearance, and I don't think that's something that is an intelligent idea for anyone to partake in. I couldn't, of course, speak about what I was doing in terms of my trips, the meetings that I was participating in, because there's some level of privacy that is required for someone working in diplomacy. Now, when I moved to academia, that's when I started this YouTube channel. Being an academic helps you to become a public facing individual. The TV, radio, YouTube interfaces I've been speaking about, blogs, websites, social media, workshops, conferences, seminars, webinars, all those are spaces where an academic can participate, not only as a speaker, contributing, to knowledge production, but also as a peer, participating in the exchange of ideas and also helping to build other people's intellectual capacities and research projects. So being mindful of what you're doing and what it, creates space for in terms of your exposure to the world is also very important. When it comes to technical skills, I think that oftentimes the technical skills you end up developing are based on what is on demand where you're based, or what you end up going for when you want something to lean on if your soft skills or your degree haven't been very helpful. And I think sometimes technical skills can take you to a space that you actually didn't think you would actually end up being in, which I don't have personal experience of. I spoke about digital media management, which is close to home, but I've seen other people pursuing law degrees, who end up being lawyers. I have seen people pivoting to economics. I've seen people pivoting to nursing. I've seen people pivoting to public health, amongst other majors. So to realize that if you end up in such a situation, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that your pathway led to that. So I think at this stage, I've covered most of what I wanted to say. And I hope that in as much as I think that I haven't been coherent in my discussion, I have been nonetheless helpful to anyone needing advice as a social science major. I also think that it is important to all the time realize that life is different for everyone. I've given you all these nuggets, but I owe much of my success to God. There are jobs that I prayed for and did not get. There are interviews I went into and did not pass. There are multiple jobs I've applied for and never got any replies to. And there are skills that I invested in through extra learning, but I have not yet applied them to the work that I do. Asking God for direction throughout 2025, wallowing about how I would have wanted to be in academia, but it didn't happen for me. So I was, slowly accepting that reality. But I ended up in academia this year. And that's a topic for another day. So I'm ending this video by letting you know that sometime soon, I'm going to speak to you about a recent development. I left academia at the end of 2024 and I returned to academia in February of 2026. I am now a lecturer in international relations and diplomacy at Africa University in Zimbabwe. Major development, and I am personally grateful to God because He made this possible in many ways. And of course, I do not fear change. Many of us get stuck in single environments because we are scared to pivot, or because we are scared to figure out what it means to, for example, leave a job to pursue a PhD, or even to think about juggling a job and a master's and what have you. So I trust that this video has given you something as a social science student, potential major, or graduate like myself. So I will end this video here today by saying once again, thank you. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done so, and of course, share for wider reach. It's goodbye for now.